Hey, everybody, welcome to Tip of the Spear. And as always, we're trying to bring the best voices out there to interpret the signs of the times, to see things through the lens of Scripture and also through the lens of Bible prophecy. And I got my good friend with me, and I'm excited to talk to him, John Howler. If you don't know John, you should. He's a pastor / lawyer, a deadly combination. I'm thankful he's on our side. But he's the pastor and elder at Fellowship Bible Chapel in Columbus, Ohio. And he's best known for his weekly prophecy updates. He does sometimes two of them. And he is a deep diver. He goes down deep. He plunges the depths, gets information that even the intelligence community asks him where is he getting his information from, because they pay attention to what he says sometimes. So he's very influential. He's a good friend of mine, good golfing pal of mine. We haven't played golf in a while, but we hopefully will do so soon. So let me welcome to the show, Mr. and Pastor John Howler.
Really good to have you, my friend. Yeah. You know, I think that it would have been good to have played golf last year when we were together in California, but it was like 120 degrees, so we probably
no, we don't want to do that.
It might have been the end of us.
Yeah, I would. We need to do Pebble Beach. That's my bucket list.
Well, we also need to do like Scotland.
Yes,
you did get to go to Scotland. I did too.
I did get to play in Scotland. I did. So that was great.
We need to go together. So
I would love that. So hey, man. Besides us talking golf, there's so much things to talk about, John. I don't even know where to start. So let's start with your analysis of Trump sent the B-2s over there, took out some nuclear installations, and so now we did that. Now there's a ceasefire. What's your interpretation of that? Of where it goes from here after he did that?
You know, one of the most difficult things we do, Brandon, is figure out what's real, what's fake, what's a psyop, and that type of thing.
Sure.
So I will say my own judgment, I tend to line up with the president and his people on this. What we're seeing with all of these leaks, and you remember for weeks we've been, Trump and Netanyahu are fighting, they're not getting along, and then Trump would come out and say, as only he would say, that's fake news. We have a big, beautiful relationship and we get along quite well. And then there's another leak. There's an alternative narrative that keeps being launched.
Yeah.
So about a week ago, last Saturday, Trump directed the Air Force to bomb 3 of the nuclear facilities in Iran. The most important one of those was Fordo. And at Fordo, they dropped all of them at Fordo. There was 14 of these giant bunker buster bombs, 30,000 pounds. They're dropped from about 7 miles up. They reach a very high velocity, terminal velocity coming down. They weigh about 30,000 pounds. And the United States is really the only, the Russians might be able to deliver something that size, but certainly outside of Russia, there's nobody else in the world that can deliver bombs like this.
Wow.
And it appears that at Fordo, that the they've known for a long time that there are a couple potential flaws, weaknesses in the way Fordo is built, because, when you build something underground like that, you need to have a ventilation shaft.
Yeah.
So there's a couple ventilation shafts, and everybody knew that those would be one of the routes of attack. The Iranians came in and covered over one or both of these ventilation shafts with some concrete. So the first bomb took that out, and then the bombs went right behind it. So they have a B-2 bomber flying at 600 miles an hour.
Yeah.
They drop this bomb from 7 miles up, and it lands within a meter of the center of its target.
Wow.
If not right on.
Yeah.
I mean, this is incredible technology.
Oh, it is.
And it ought to just scare the pants off of people that it can be. So, look, I agree with Trump. This was an amazing operation. There was a lot of stealth involved, not stealth fighters necessarily. They are stealth in a sense. They're not invisible, but they look like a different kind of aircraft, I think, on radar.
Yeah.
But they had actually sent some from the opposite direction, B-2s and tankers and everything. And you remember about a week ago, before this happened, there were all these reports, look at all these tankers flying to the Middle East. What's going on? What's going on? Well, now we know what was going on, but part of it was a head fake. So it was like the military equivalent of a Larry Bird head fake. You remember seeing that where the guy just ends up sprawled on the ground? Yeah. And I know that because I was in graduate school at Indiana State when Bird was a sophomore. So I saw him up close in practice and everything. And it unlike anything I've ever seen. But anyway, so it was an amazing operation, and they did attack it. Trump immediately comes out and says it's obliterated. And then as the battle damage assessments we're waiting for them to come out, all of a sudden, the intelligence community, somebody in the intelligence or military community leaked something to New York Times and CNN saying, oh, well, yeah, it was an attack, but it only set back their nuclear program several months. So a few comments on that. Look, I doubt that. Yeah. But it also shows us that despite Trump being reelected, there is an ideological war going on within our military intelligence and State Department apparatus that's very opposed to Trump and even more so opposed to any Israeli interests being advanced, and it's pro-Iranian. This has been a long-standing problem in our government. We saw it was very bad under Obama. Yes. It was very bad under Biden. But Trump had trouble in his first administration, and I'm reading some reports. I'm trying to remember where I read it. I think it was at Rare Foundation, RAIR Foundation.com.
I know what you're talking about.
Amy Meck, writing about a thing called the Quincy Institute that I don't think a lot of people understand. Okay. The Quincy Institute is funded by the Koch brothers, who are very anti-Trump. At least I think they're both dead, the billionaires. And it's sort of a think tank. But the problem is a lot of these guys are getting appointed to posts in the Trump administration. So the question becomes at some point, is he going along with it, or is he putting in there, keep your enemies close, or keep your friends close and your enemies closer? I honestly don't know. It makes no sense to me. Yes. So everything that happens, there's going to be an alternative narrative advanced in the media. So this morning, as we record this, Hegseth and some other military guys had I guess I would only describe it as a barn burner of a press conference where they took on the media about what they're doing. And I just have to tell you, it's very concerning. You see these things happening. There's the lawfare continues, the crazy lawsuits against Trump, the forum shopping for, so they have a problem with ICE in Los Angeles. So they want to sue Trump. So you would think as a lawyer, okay, it's going on in Los Angeles. So you would sue in Los Angeles, right? No, they take, they don't have the bullet train there yet through Bakersfield, but they do a bullet train type thing, and they file the case in San Francisco because they're more likely to get a lunatic leftist judge that's going to do what they want. Of course. And the one guy that did it, he's an 83-year-old guy. He's a younger brother of Stephen Breyer, who was a lunatic leftist Supreme Court justice. So this Judge Breyer in San Francisco puts in these ridiculous rules. Trump can't do take over the National Guard. And immediately the government appeals it. And the Ninth Circuit, of all people, including an Obama judge, ruled 3-0 against this fruitcake in San Francisco. And so
that's saying something.
But this is happening on every level. Yeah. And look, I spent a lot of my career doing temporary restraining order, injunction, work, particularly with respect to trade secrets, violation of non-compete agreements, and that type of thing. I know what it takes to get these things.
Yeah.
You don't get nationwide injunctions. This is a perversion of the legal system in the United States. And I don't know the answer to it. It's very hard for the Trump administration to move forward with its agenda, which they should be allowed to. I think they won the election pretty clearly this time.
Right.
But this lawfare stuff is totally out of control.
Yeah, I agree. The funny thing is that's the same thing Netanyahu's facing over there in Israel, because that's one of the things internally they're messed up with is their judicial system out of control. They tried to reform that thing, but then October 7th happened. But
yeah,
it parallels.
I've watched, I've listened to our mutual friend Caroline Glick talk about this for years when she was, still in the media before she joined the Netanyahu administration, about the ridiculous nature of these charges against Netanyahu. And here is Israel in a war since October 7th, 2023. So over a year and a half, 20 months. And Netanyahu is a couple weeks a month having to sit for days of testimony.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Brandon, I was a trial lawyer.
Yeah.
Okay. I once had a big case involving, an insurance broker. The guy on the other side was a lunatic. Okay. I represented a big insurance company. You would know the name of it.
Okay.
He and the guy who sold the insurance policy, medical policy to this guy, and the broker, he had them under oath and depositions for 45 hours.
Oh, my goodness.
And I finally told him, his name was Keith, I said, Keith, are you out of your mind? There's not an insurance agent on the planet that I want to sit and listen to for more than 15 minutes.
Right.
And you've spent 45 hours with these two guys. You can't get relief from the court. And it was a way that they were trying to beat us into submission. But now I'm seeing Netanyahu testifying day after day after day after day, all day long on these ridiculous cases. And it's designed to create a disability on the part of Netanyahu. Well, he's so tied up with these criminal cases, he can't fulfill his duty as the prime minister of Israel. So he needs to resign.
Yes.
And we need to go to elections. And that's exactly what they're trying to do.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. And they tried to do it with Trump and they failed. And they're going to fail with, I hear rumors in Israel right now from people that I talk to that they're about ready to get rid of these cases against Netanyahu.
Oh,
but imagine, Israel's at a war. This is an existential fight for the survival of Israel.
Yeah.
And the prime minister, he can't even fire the Shin Bet guy. And when he's fired and the guy then resigns, they're not allowed. I just saw this in the news this morning. The attorney general is not allowing him to appoint a new Shin Bet director in the middle of a war.
Wow.
You know what, Brandon? If you went to Hollywood with a script of what we see happen in Israel and the Middle East and in the Trump and Netanyahu administrations with what's actually happened, the Hollywood people would say, look, we appreciate fiction. We know that it's, you want to make up a good story, but it has to be a little bit believable. But the problem is that this is reality that we live in, even though it seems unbelievable.
You're hitting the nail on the head. And you sent me a story earlier today, and I want you to talk about this because, we saw Trump's visit to the Middle East. He went and saw MBS. He went to Qatar, which I couldn't trust Qatar as far as I can throw them, John. I don't understand that move. And then, bringing in that Shara guy from Syria, acting like, all of a sudden he's all Western now because he has a suit on and he's trimmed his beard up and he's not a jihadi anymore, and incorporating him. And then they had Erdogan on the phone, I guess expanding the Abrahamic Accords. What were they? I don't understand. I know a lot of financial things were going down. I know he wants to beat China with AI, and there was a lot of AI stuff going on there. Help me understand that. I don't understand, why are we doing deals with guys you can never trust?
Wow. You know, I was very vocal against anything with Qatar, as I know you were. I know we've talked about it. Qatar is the financial arm of the Muslim Brotherhood. And
that's right.
The interesting phenomenon we've seen in the U.S. is this rise of anti-Israel sentiment on both sides of the aisle. I interviewed Trevor Loudon a couple months ago, and Trevor is convinced that it's sort of a Russian propaganda thing to sow discord on the right. And so now you see people on the right, they're as anti-Israel as anybody on the left.
I know. Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens. Yeah, totally.
I believe his name is, he's renamed, he has a new name. It's Tucker Carlson. And it's Irandis Owen.
I agree. And then you have Steve Witkoff going over there and saying, oh, Qatar's great. They're good people. And it's like, what are you talking about?
Well, part of the problem there is they bought him out at about, $700 million of a hotel that he was upside down on
in New York.
I have a problem with it. It doesn't make any sense to me. And then he'll come out every now and then, and everybody, Trump will say, oh, he's a great guy. He's a great negotiator. But then he'll say, Qatar's okay. And we got to get this Palestinians. They're just kind of misunderstood, or whatever it is. I mean, he goes to Syria. And he meets with this it was originally Al-Jalani, now it's Al-Shara.
He keeps changing his name.
He's changing his names last name as much as Elizabeth Taylor did husbands.
Right.
And it's clear this guy has had this extreme makeover. One of the things that came out after the Assad regime fell was that Assad had a barbershop in the palace. And it appears that Al-Shara knows where that is, because he's got his beard trimmed up, his hair trimmed and everything.
Yeah.
And, and he's taking his wife down to Mecca, and they're going to the Kaaba, and they're going inside the Kaaba, which is very reserved only for very elite individuals. Erdogan recently did it himself as well. And it's clear that for Syria, this was a long-term Turkish operation.
Sure.
There's no doubt about that. And so, in fact, at his year-end news conference, everybody says Putin's sick, he's weak, and he's got cancer or something like that. And then he goes and does these news conferences and these things, and he's on stage for 4 hours. And I don't think he even goes to the bathroom.
Well, that's what I've heard. He doesn't even go to the bathroom. He's sitting up there for 4 hours. It's like, what's going on?
And he's 2 years older than I am, and I'm telling you, that's inhuman. It
is.
Or it's a superhuman power that I don't have.
Right.
So anyway, but at his year-end news conference, Putin did get up there and say that the takeover of Damascus, it was protected by 40,000 Syrian troops, funded by Russia. Al-Shara came in there with 800 people and took over the whole city of Damascus in one day. So then Russia has fled. Russia's got its own problems in Ukraine. Russia had supplied air defense systems to Iran. A lot of those were taken out back in November, and a massive operation by Israel. By the way, the history books, this is a good, interesting question. Will we be reading history books in the millennium? Will it matter? Because I'm just telling you, the books about what Israel's done in the last 2 years,
right,
could be written well into the millennium if they're researched well, because of the amazing operations that they've done. The Beeper attack, taking out Nasrallah with a bunch of bombs dropped in the same place, very similar to what the U.S. just had to do. I mean, so Israel is good for us. They're giving us a lot of intel. But I just think this thing with Erdogan, who Trump says he's a wonderful guy, we have a great relationship, all of that stuff. And it's like, are you kidding me? This guy.
Right.
And I don't remember if we talked about this in the last time we talked, but that rally that they had on January 1st with the poster, and it had a picture of Hagia Sophia, the largest church ever built in Christendom. We can argue about whether their Orthodox theology is good or bad, but it is symbolic to the Muslim world that this is the largest Christian church ever built. In the middle, it had the Umayyad Mosque from Damascus, and then it had the Dome of the Rock on the Temple Mount. And it said, yesterday, Hagia Sophia, we got the biggest church in Christendom is now a mosque. That was done 5 years ago.
Wow.
Today, Damascus, that was the most significant mosque in the Umayyad dynasty that came out of Persia, controlled all the Middle East, Turkey, all the way into France, all of Spain and France and Northern Africa, one of the largest empires. So yesterday, Hagia, the Christians, today, the Persians, tomorrow, Al-Aqsa, the Jews in Jerusalem. And that's Erdogan. And he orchestrated these guys were shipped up north by during the Syrian civil war. Erdogan funded their groups. They reconstituted themselves. They trained. And this went on for like 5 years. He bided his time. And now they took over Syria. And the word today is the Abraham Accords are going to be expanded.
There you go.
To include Syria.
Yeah, and his meeting with Shara over there when he came to Saudi Arabia, they were glad handing him. And this guy was a terrorist, I think, right? He had a $10 million bounty on him from the United States,
right?
And all of a sudden, he's a good guy. Where is the intelligence community? What you just described about Erdogan and his goals. Why is that not being fed to Trump? I don't understand what's happening.
Look, I saw the Trump and Erdogan at the NATO meeting here just recently, and they're big handshake, slap. Hey, good buddy, good to see you. You're a great guy. And then, by the way, the other thing that happened at the NATO meeting was, and it happened when Macron was in Turkey recently, or they met up, this really weird handshake thing going on between Macron and Erdogan. I don't know what's going on there.
Oh, gosh.
The only person I like anymore from that whole group is I love Georgia Maloney and her eye rolls that she gives to Macron.
Yeah, she's great.
Yeah, I mean, it's very easy to kind of tell where she stands on something.
Right.
Whether you're making a good thing with her. So, look, we're in a very unique situation. When I was in Israel a couple of years ago for the media summit, the Abraham Accords were, we were into the Biden administration then, but everybody was talking about the Abraham Accords.
Yeah.
The business guys. This is great. This will be great for business. And they were talking like, originally they were saying it was going to be $50 billion of trade. By the time we got to the media summit, they're talking $1 trillion of trade.
Wow. With
the countries in the Abraham Accords. And that's before the Saudis came in. So it looked like the Saudis were on the verge of coming in. Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman did an interview with Bret Baier in late September of 2023. And then Netanyahu went to the UN meeting that week and said that we're on the verge of a new Middle East. And that seems kind of prophetic now.
Yeah, it does.
Because we're not on the verge of a new Middle East. We're in the middle of a new Middle East. And look, I want to give Israel credit where credit is due. They have done an amazing thing with the limited resources of people that they have.
Sure.
They've destroyed Gaza. and now in the new Trump Netanyahu supposed proposal, people who want to leave Gaza will be allowed to immigrate to Arab countries. And the Gaza area will be managed by United Arab Emirates and Egypt, I think.
I thought it was Saudi Arabia.
That's right, Saudi Arabia. And the Saudi Arabians will come into the accords. There's a proposal that the Palestinians will make some changes and there will be a Palestinian state, and Israel will back off on claims of sovereignty over large areas of what's called the West Bank, actually biblical Judea and Samaria. And I will tell you, I was just talking to Bill Koenig. I'm not happy about this because if you remember early on in the Trump 47 administration, the first foreign visitor comes in, it's Bibi Netanyahu.
Yeah.
And during that thing, they said, listen, somebody asked Trump, what about sovereignty in the West Bank, Judea and Samaria? Trump said, we'll have a decision in 30 days. Okay, we're at about day, 175 or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's not here yet. And now it looks like they're going to back off. And so, if I was a conspiracy theorist, I might say, well, here's how we will, Trump and Netanyahu will orchestrate this whole thing to get the two-state solution and get peace, and we'll get our Nobel Peace Prizes, and history will remember us. And the problem, Brandon, is that Iran's not going away.
Right.
Russia's not going away. Turkey's not going away. And I'm concerned that, look, Trump's a lame duck. Okay, he can't run for office again. I don't care what anybody says. But if he can't run for office again, then he doesn't have to worry about what it's like when the next person comes along and has to clean up the mess that's left behind. And I'm very concerned about that because unless the Lord returns, there's going to be another election, and I'm perceiving that there will be a very big fat mess left in the Middle East. Yeah.
No doubt about that. Now, let me ask you this. So we've got a ceasefire with Iran, and our mutual friend, Bill Koenig, we were talking to him a couple weeks ago, and they're all in the mentality there has to be regime change. Does it look like they're going to do that? What do you think they're going to do with this Ayatollah guy and the clerics there in Iran? Because that seems to be the problem.
So regime change was always going to be a very difficult thing. In fact, I think I've said a few times that, you can do regime change, but what comes out on the other side?
Right, you don't know. It's unintended consequences.
Like the old saying is, you like sausage, you just don't want to watch it being made.
Right, exactly.
And so that was going to be very messy. And I know I talked about it because my concern was, okay, we get rid of the religious zealots. Now we get the military/religious zealots in the IRGC. So give Israel tremendous credit for this massive, unprecedented decapitation of the IRGC leadership.
Sure, absolutely.
I think only one of them survived. Yeah. They took out the top nuclear scientists. The top one survived. And these were surgical strikes, getting guys in their bedroom.
Yeah. Amazing.
Very precise surgical and done it appears that the U.S. and Israel worked together to lure the IRGC upper echelon to a meeting, and then they bombed the meeting and killed all of them.
Yeah.
They've appointed replacements, and some of those replacements have been taken out. And so Israel, I think I just read something that the Israeli Mossad has said today, we're going to be operating in Iran for a very long time. So I think that part of the strike was to, one, affect the military response, demoralize the IRGC, and also to prevent those guys from coming into leadership.
Okay.
And there's this hope that, the Shah's this crown prince, the son of the Shah,
Yeah, I've seen
that
him
fell in
emerge.
1979
Yeah.
with the help of the Jimmy Carter administration, showing that even back then we had pro-Iranian revolutionary elements in the Democratic apparatus and State Department and everything in Washington. I don't think that I just don't see a revolution. I know I've seen some very moving videos from Christians in Iraq, or messages from Christians in Iraq, of which there seem to be a lot. They're under persecution. They're afraid. We need to pray for them. I just don't see a revolution happening right now. I think it would be very difficult. Certainly politically, there's no way that Trump is going to do anything that requires him to put boots on the ground in Iran.
Right.
And Israel doesn't have enough people.
Yeah.
I mean, Iran is Israel's 8, 9, 10 million people probably. Iran is 95 million.
Right.
Although, by the way, the largest decline in human fertility rate over a 10-year period in human history happened in Iran over the last 15 years. Yeah, they've been writing about the demographic collapse in Iran, even in the regime newspapers like the Tehran Times. I've got the quotes from 4 or 5 years ago. The fastest decline in female fertility of any country in human history. That's from the regime's own mouth. So they know, and I wonder about that. I see China that way. I see Russia's having severe demographic problems. We're having them.
Yes, we are.
I mean, the population is aging. I mean, I sort of have this vision of the Lord tarries in 20, 30 years, it's going to be, a platoon of 70-year-olds, and their walkers coming in those little carts you get at Walmart. Yeah. I have not used one of those yet. I want the record to reflect that.
Thank God.
But coming over the hill to invade somebody, being met by a similar army. Well, maybe the solution to that, by the way, this was part of the tech roundtable that we've done, and we did one just recently. Robots. We need robots to do the jobs because we're running out of people.
Yeah.
And by the way, I don't know how this figures into Bible prophecy. It's a fact. It's true of a lot of the major players. I mean, Europe's terrible.
Oh, yeah. And you said it before, demographics is destiny.
That's right.
And even in America, we're seeing the demographics of young people. I think it's Gen Z. They're not having kids, and they're postponing having kids. And postponing marriage. They're not even getting married. So you're talking about into the 30s, 35, not married, no kids. And, you start bumping up into the late 30s, early 40s. Now it becomes a risk having kids. And so what's happening with them? Well, some of the things that are happening here is they like to have fun and they like to be single, and it's very narcissistic. So we're fighting that here in our country. I don't know what Iran's fighting with. I definitely know what Europe is fighting with, because a lot of people have said that if you look at the European leaders, a lot of them are not married or don't have kids, like Macron, for instance.
I believe, Macron's wife was pretty substantially older.
Yeah, right. I know that.
Having a child would be on the order of Abraham and Sarah.
Right. But not even adoption. I mean, Angela Merkel, not married, no kids. I mean, you just go down the list, and they're not family oriented. And a lot of people have theorized it's because when you don't have any hope for the future, you don't have any kids. I don't know. What's your take on that?
It's sort of a combination of technology, industrialization leads to declining fertility rates, but then the lack of hope in the future. And now we're introducing in this technology and AI. And I just saw, Patrick Wood on his Technocracy News this week had an article about the fact that it's causing problems in universities. computer science departments, they are afraid will disappear. In fact, get this.
Really?
They're now saying like PhD computer science people cannot find a job because they're using all AI is doing the entry level coding and everything.
Wow.
And they're now suggesting at major universities that rather than take computer science, maybe you should get a degree in the liberal arts.
Oh, wow.
Now, do you know that, again, this would be something, if you put this in a movie script, the older executives that are determining whether you can make the movie say, you can't do that because it's not believable. And this is the problem. Well, it's sort of like the Babylon Bee. The Babylon Bee is going to go out of business because real life is so weird that satire doesn't work anymore.
That's right. That's a good point. That's a good point.
So anyway, I think that we've really sort of crossed a bunch of Rubicons recently in the world. So look, so back to the Middle East. I'm very concerned about this. I'm concerned that they're going to give up sovereignty for most of the areas called the West Bank, biblical Judea and Samaria. Yeah. That's in the articles, all the articles that I've read.
I hope Trump doesn't do that because, John, it brings in the cursing element of the Abrahamic covenant. You know, I will bless those who bless you and curse those who curse you. And you know, the passages in Joel that talk about dividing my land. I mean, you can't do that. And, you know, a lot of people theorize, and again, I'm just echoing what they're saying, that one of the reasons Trump failed to win the election last time, we know there was a lot of cheating going on, but God's hand was on that because of what he had done through Jared Kushner with the Abrahamic Accords. And it divided the land. And I know there was other prophecy teachers saying this was great, this is wonderful. And I'm like, how can you say this is great and wonderful when it divides Israel? It divided the capital, for goodness sake.
Right.
I don't know, man.
Well, there was a lot of controversy within our community about whether it's not really dividing because the Arabs will never accept it. But now we're sitting here watching it be revived right in front of our eyes.
Exactly. And
I just got off the phone with Bill Caney before we started.
Okay.
And we were talking about, hey, what happened when this peace plan was introduced in January 2020? Well, there was a big earthquake in Miami, financial district, I think, that day. And that afternoon, Peter Navarro and others at the White House were confronted with we will only describe this as the Charlie Vector 019er problem.
There you go. Yeah, right. You're right.
All right in sequence.
Right, exactly. Bill's wrote that book, Eye to Eye.
Eye to Eye,
yeah. Eye to Eye Chronicles. Every time we do something negative to Israel and curse Israel, we get the cursing back, whether it's some natural disaster or, like you're saying, Charlie Vector 019er. I don't think those things are coincidences. If I understand the Abrahamic covenant, that's God's foreign policy, and it's still in effect. That's why I'm concerned about this renewing the Abrahamic covenant and then bringing in these other guys like Syria, and then you got Erdogan flexing his muscles, and it's like, it just blows my mind.
Let me tell you something so recently there's a guy named Michael Duran.
Okay.
He does an Israel update with Gadi Taub, who used to be a leftist in Israel, now is a arch conservative.
Oh, okay.
Duran's pro-Turkey. He lobbies for Turkey. I think he's with the Hudson Institute. But he did a program recently with Duran Spielman, who has a program on JNS called True East. Duran recently wrote a book about, and you've probably been there, the City of David. He worked at the City of David for 20-some years. So I interviewed him, I don't know, a month ago. A very interesting interview about his book. But in their thing, they were talking about Turkey. And Michael Duran made a very interesting comment that, first of all, North Korea produces more artillery ammunition than all of Europe combined.
Really? Wow.
And so, I mean, so this might have some impact on what we think about, where this final beast empire is centered or comes from.
Yeah.
But and I've questioned that for a long time for various reasons. That's one of the reasons why I came up with my logistics part of my grid, because Europe's awful. I mean, they could not. I think they wanted to do peacekeeping someplace, and they couldn't come up with 10,000 people from all of Europe for
Wow.
peacekeeping force.
Wow.
It was ludicrous,
pathetic, man.
And it's sort of like, yeah, Turkey's going to come after you, hoping that they still have the 4 tanks that were working or still working. Then they're trying to build it up, but it's a ramp up that's going to take a long time. But the one exclusion from that, all of Europe, was Turkey. Okay. And Duran said, listen, Turkey has achieved and has been working on this for 50 years. The Muslims always take a long term.
True.
They don't care if it happens when I'm alive. They'll be great if it does, but they're looking 200, 300 years down the road. They don't worry about election cycles. They worry about changing history.
Yeah.
Turkey has achieved over that period of time operational sovereignty with regard to its military. They can operate their military in a war, even if everybody cuts them off, blockades them, and sanctions them. So Duran Spielman said, well, maybe Israel needs to do the same, and that would be great. Get Israel away from relying on the U.S., become self-sufficient, and throw off, because they're shackled by that memorandum of understanding. There's things they just can't do.
Right.
So when you see a guy like Steve Bannon say, well, why don't they just build their own bunker busters? And I don't know if Steve Bannon said that, so maybe I shouldn't say that. Somebody said, why don't they just build their own bunker busters? Well, they may not be able to do so without violating the agreement that they have with the United States on various defense systems.
Right.
But then Duran made just kind of an off the cuff thing. Well, maybe Turkey will take over Iran. And so when you think of this sort of Daniel 8 thing about something coming from the West to the East to come against Iran, is that a prophecy for our time? I happen to think it is. I don't know if it's Turkey, but I'm just saying there's a lot of different pieces on the chessboard that are sort of moving around. And it's like everybody's got a queen that can do these, the fantastic moves that a queen can do in chess.
Yeah.
I don't know. Look, Turkey's very important. We've known this forever.
Sure.
We need to pay attention to Turkey.
Yeah.
But who was it I saw? Oh, I know what it was. There's a guy named Hillel Fold. He's a tech guy in Israel. His brother Ari was killed by a young terrorist down at the Gush Etzion Junction, not too far from Efrat, where you've been to interview Caroline. And Ari Fold, IDF reserve guy, larger than life, loved Israel, big Zionist, Jewish guy. His wife sends him down to get something at the store. You've been right by that intersection. Yeah. Kid stabs him in the back, severs his aorta. Ari chases him down, shoots him, keeps him from stabbing somebody else. The kid gets put in prison. And in one of the first hostage exchanges from Gaza, the kid's released from prison.
Unbelievable.
So I talked to Hillel, but today Hillel posted something that was you should follow him. He's an interesting guy.
Okay.
And he was in the tech business, but he's sort of taken time off to work to support Israel. But he said, Syria's coming into the Abraham Accords. If you wrote this a year ago, people would say you are out of your mind. There's no way that would ever happen.
Right.
And here we sit. It happened in December. It seems like it happened 4 years ago. It was less than 6 months. It was 6 months ago. And now they're talking about them coming into the Abraham Accords. And it's one of these, if you did it in a movie script, people wouldn't believe that it was actually plausible.
No. And look at the rapidity of how things have changed. And even Netanyahu said is that Israel has changed the whole face of the Middle East. Dismantling Hamas, dismantling Hezbollah, and now going after Iran's nuclear installations. And it's been within, historically in a moment really of history. This wasn't long developed. And you're right. Just 6 months ago, could you even imagine saying that? No. And I wonder if this has to do with this concept that Messiah brought, John, is the birth pains. And the closer you get, the faster things develop. We were talking off air. I can't even keep up with the amount of information that's coming out. And this is far different than when I first started 25 years ago looking at prophecy. And compared to today, I can't stay on top of it, John. What you think this is like the signs of birth pains? I mean, we don't know how long we have, but I have never seen things develop so fast.
Yeah. I mean, like we did our technology roundtable the other night, and we cut it off at about 2 hours and 20 minutes. We could have gone 9 hours easily.
So much.
And we're just trying to inform people of what's going on. And everywhere I look, I got to tell you, everybody's publishing a big PDF document from this think tank or that think tank. They're having conferences like crazy. They're having this economic thing. Putin had the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum, SPIEF. You've got the World Government Summit. You've got the Financial Investment Initiative Institute from Saudi Arabia. And by the way, the World Economic Forum is not going to be in Davos this year. I don't know if you knew that. It's being relocated for the foreseeable future.
Oh, really?
To Riyadh, Saudi Arabia.
Oh, no. Are you serious?
Saudi Arabia, who is now, at least the last stats I saw, is consuming 20% of all steel produced on the planet.
Wow.
They're building that. Yep. NEOM is still being built.
NEOM is still being built?
You can go to Google Earth. You can go down there and you can see the whole line under excavation and construction for 100 miles.
Wow.
They're building this thing in Riyadh called the Muqab. Okay. It'd be a lot of AI and that type of thing, so virtual reality stuff with it. But the interior of the building, all the mock-ups that we see, the models of the Tower of Babel. Yeah. It's inside this giant cube, which sort of looks like the New Jerusalem that we see in drawings.
It has all these messages with that. Yes, I've seen that.
And by the way, I just learned something the other day. There's like a red, it's green, red, green, white, green, or green, white, red on the Iranian flag. And there's like a script across there. Do you know what that is?
No. What
11 times in green and 11 times in red, it says, Allah is greater. Or great as Allah or something like that. 22 times on the flag, anyway. So here's the Muqab. 25 Empire State Buildings would fit inside. Yeah. And the interior of it looks very much like the models of the Tower of Babel. And in Riyadh, and it's under construction. You can go look at the videos, see the foundations are pretty much done.
Wow.
1,500 feet on each side, a golden cube with a Tower of Babel inside, and the World Economic Forum will be there next year. And I don't know if it's in the Muqab, but it certainly is going to be in Riyadh for the foreseeable future.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So, John, I got about 5 more minutes, man. What should
I thought you said we had an hour. We've only been talking for 5 minutes right now.
Right. It goes by really quick. There's so much information. We could go on forever. With this last few segments of this last 5 minutes, what top things you think this summer that Christians need to be paying attention to?
Well, I think on the tech side, we have this Mark of the Beast system that's, I think, well underway. Okay. I don't know exactly how that's going to play out. I mean, I see about implants and wearables, and I'm looking at a video playing off to my side here with RFK testifying about wearables. And it seems like a lot of this stuff is being sent, not necessarily that this is the mark of the beast, but it's conditioning people for it.
Sure. Yeah. Prelude to it. Yeah.
And so I don't know how that works because, we talk about brain chips, and I was just talking to a guy at the golf club the other day where I work. And he said, well, I'm going to go out. I'm walking, but I may have to leave because I'm on call. And I said, what do you do? I mean, and this, by the way, this was a very large guy.
Okay.
And when I say large guy, think of me as the baseline average size guy.
Okay.
This guy was huge.
This is a Nephilim.
He was. I mean, his calves were at least twice as big as mine. And anyway, I said, what do you do? And he goes, well, I have to be on call at the hospital. I said, oh, are you a doctor? No, I'm a technician. I implant chips in people's brains.
What?
Oh, he said, goodness. I said, like Neuralink. He goes, there are 5 chips out there that are way beyond Neuralink.
Really?
And he works for a company that I represented, a medical pharmaceutical company that I represented at times in my career. And he says, yeah, I implant these things. And he said, go tell a Parkinson's patient that he can't have a brain chip like this.
Mm.
And I just saw one of my best friends ever on the trip to California where I saw you recently.
Yeah. And
he was Parkinson's, laying in a bed on hospice, and he died a couple weeks ago after we got to see him. But so tell me that he says the people, it's unbelievable what happens when people get this.
Really?
And so there's a good news. And so I know that there's this concern. So I feel like, Brandon, I'm in this. So this would be another thing I think we need to be aware of is we're going to be in these massive quandaries.
Yeah.
Like we're pushing forward on AI and it's unregulated and they don't want anybody doing anything about it. But on the other hand, nobody else is putting the brakes on.
Yeah.
And how do you defend yourself in a world where that's happening?
Yeah. Yeah. I totally get that. That's been the argument from Musk and Trump and
right.
The American tech guys is saying if we don't do it, then China and Russia will. And so who would you rather have it controlling it, us or them? And I get it. And it's what they call it, an AI arms race.
Right. But then on the other hand, you have companies like Palantir who are being given the opportunity to hoover up all of our data and consolidate it at our government.
Sure.
And, look, all those guys were right there in the row behind Trump at the inauguration and everything.
They were.
Trillions of dollars of wealth.
Mm-hmm.
But what do you do? Do you just shut it off completely? And China comes on and can outdo you? I don't know what the answer is. I do know that eventually I'm out of here some fashion. Death, rapture, and Jesus will return. And I'm glad I'm an old guy a lot of days because, I look at nieces and nephews and great nieces and nephews, and it's like, wow, what a world they're growing up in.
Yeah, right.
But listen, when I went to Israel the first time in 1995, there was a big yellow sign hanging from the Jewish quarter at the Western Wall Plaza.
Okay.
And it was in Hebrew. It was put up by the Lubavitchers, and it said, this is 30 years ago. Hakuna Laviat HaMashiach. Prepare for the coming of Messiah.
Mm.
So I would say this is one of these places where we probably ought to listen to that and think about that and how that's going to work out and how short time is and what we ought to be doing in light of that.
Amen. I agree. And that's the thing I've been noticing, John. We didn't talk about it at all, but the church, I've kind of seen the attitude in a lot of the churches where they saw Trump get in and they said, fine, then I'm going to put everything in neutral and I'm going to just let Trump fight all of our battles and I'm going to take a 4-year respite from the battle. And I think that's totally wrong, obviously. But unfortunately, even people in our circle have taken that stance of like, okay, then we got a time of rest. And it's like, no, the people are still there that are wanting to cause problems. They haven't went away. Have you seen that, John? That mentality?
Yeah, there's a big division in the church over how to approach politics and that type of thing. I take the more, look, it's not going to create the kingdom of God on earth. Nobody
Right.
that advocates for involvement in politics believes that in our community.
Right.
Nobody does.
No.
You don't, I don't, anybody else you want to name, they don't.
That's right.
It's part of it is, so it's sort of like, well, why would you help Israel? Or why would you do this? So I know there's this great promise about Israel, and there's Romans 9 through 11.
Sure.
October 7th happens. The next day, I said, the issue of Israel, and I'm not a prophet, by the way, the issue of Israel will be the most divisive issue in the evangelical church until Jesus returns.
You are absolutely right.
I stand by that.
I agree.
And people say, well, why would you do that? Listen, there's a great promise about reconciliation, grafting back in, redemption, and all of this.
Yes.
It's sort of like the argument I had with somebody once. If you're on a plane and the guy's going to hijack it, what would you do? So you're on a plane of 180 people, the guy's hijacking it. You know what he's going to do with it. This was like within months after 9/11. I'm sitting next to a Muslim guy on a plane to New York, and I'm thinking about this. And so I was honest with the people. I said, I'd take him out. You would not believe the vitriol that came my way. How dare you take away his opportunity to hear the gospel? And I said, how dare you take away the opportunity of the 180 people sitting behind me to hear the gospel? So it's a balance thing.
Sure.
And so I do know this. Dead people never accept the gospel.
Right.
So that's you can take that one to the bank. And so how do we factor in? So like when we work on a transgender issue, okay, people say, why you bother with that? No, a lot of those kids commit suicide.
That's right.
Dead kids who've suicided themselves will never accept the gospel.
That's right.
And so we should be preserving things like that.
I agreed. And that's the concept of salt and light. And I'm getting a bunch of stuff from people that are in our camp saying, well, I support the Jewish people in Israel, but I don't see why America has to give them money, why America has to give them weapons and ammunition. I don't understand why Israel controls our foreign policy. And I mean, when I hear that, John, they're just speaking out of total ignorance when they say that.
Yeah. And by the way, is it not possible to rationally conclude that it's a good idea to support Israel politically, geopolitically in that area of the world?
Exactly. Not even if I knew the Bible, I would see that we've got to have a vanguard over there. Yoram Ettinger, he was the former ambassador to the United States. You know him. And he said to me, he goes, Israel's position out there is like a permanent aircraft carrier for the United States. And you can give us the weapons, we'll do the dirty work and keep the peace and keep the nation of America protected. And when he said that, it was just so simple to understand. I don't even have to know Genesis 12:3. But if I want America to be safe, I'm going to support Israel and keep those psychopaths at bay over there in the Middle East.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, look, we have a great opportunity. What was it that Jesus said to his disciples? Guys, you should consider yourselves blessed. You're living at a time, this is at his first coming, that the prophets look forward to, and here you are. Should we not take that pattern and apply it to else. It's troubling out there. It's
It
stressful. It's intense. But we should consider ourselves blessed that we live when what the prophets wrote about the second coming of Messiah is unfolding right in front of us.
Amen. Amen. And that's a good place to end, my friend. John,
Thank you, Brandon.
how do people find you, my friend?
Fellowship Bible Chapel on YouTube, or my name, and Real FBC on Rumble. I'm on Twitter and X. I don't post a lot, but most of my stuff is done by videos, and then fbchapel.com.
Perfect, man.
Thank you, Brandon.
Thank you for all the hard work you're doing, John. It blesses us. You're doing a lot of work. I understand. Look, hours and hours are poured in to getting this information that you get, and then you put it out there and you make it palatable for those that need this. So thank you for all you're doing, man.
Thank you, Brandon.
Okay, brother.
Appreciate it.
We'll see you next time, brother.
Thanks.
Okay. And guys, thank you for tuning in. It's always a joy to have you guys with us. And like the Lord said, when you see these things begin to happen, like John and I were talking about Israel, about the Middle East, about AI technology, the beast system, and all these things that we talked about, even the decline of the church to even support Israel. What did Jesus say? Look up, lift up your heads, for your redemption draws near. God bless you guys. We'll see you next time. Hey everybody, I need your help, and I need your help in 3 different areas. First of all, I need your help on our channel. Our channel is working against an algorithm, and so we need you to like, subscribe, and hit the bell. And if you'll do that, that helps us get the message out to many people. It outdoes the algorithm that's working against us. So if you'll do those things, real simple, like, subscribe, hit the bell, it'll get our message out to as many people as possible. The second thing you could do to help us out is prayer. We get a lot of pushback online from not only human beings, but from the demonic realm as well. And so we need prayer. And so if you can pray for our ministry, that would greatly help us out. And third, it takes a lot of financial resources to put these programs on. And so we do a lot of filming, with a lot of editing, a lot of going on location. In fact, sometimes we film in Israel, and we film in Turkey and different places like that. And so it takes a lot of money to do these special programs that we put together. And so we need finances. And so if the Lord puts it on your heart to help us, that would be greatly appreciated by us in our ministry. So those are the 3 ways you can help us. Pray to the Lord how you could do that. Real easy. Like, subscribe, hit the bell, pray, and financially support us. God bless you. Thank you so much.